I was like, what, you serious? What's up, language leaders? Welcome back to another video. My name is Erica. So today's video is going to be just a little bit different. We are not going to discuss language learning in particular today, but I know that a lot of you all who follow me are learning Spanish, and several of you are learning with the primary goal of being able to travel or move abroad. And without a doubt, Mexico tops the list for many of you. As Americans, it is the most popular tourist destination and expat destination. So let's talk about some of the things that shocked me, surprised me, or were just bits of new information that I've picked up over my 6.5 years living here in Mexico. Now, obviously, most of us are not doing much traveling right now because we're in quarantine or semi-quarantine at least. So stay at home, but there is never a better time than now to prepare for the future, right? I live in Chiapas, Mexico. I've also lived in Los Cabos. I live here with my husband, who is Mexican, my husband of 10 years. Woo, we just celebrated our 10-year anniversary in quarantine, unfortunately. That was not expected, but it's okay. So we also have 2 daughters. Now, I love living in Mexico. There are so many perks to living here, which I will be discussing in a future video. But as with any place, there are going to be things that you are not at all accustomed to. And that's what we're talking about today. Before we get into that, make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell if you are into information about Mexico, Spanish, or language learning in general. All right, guys, so we have to start this off with the infamous toilet paper situation. Yes, the toilet paper situation is a real thing. I am not talking about the lack of toilet paper that happened during this whole quarantine situation. I am talking about the fact that you may not be able to flush your toilet paper in Mexico. Now, this is going to depend on where you live, but let me just tell you how I became privy to this information. So, we were in our first apartment in Cabo San Lucas, and my husband had been there for about 2 weeks. He'd gotten a few things set up in the apartment. I had been there with our then 10-month-old daughter for about 2.5 hours. So I was pretty fresh off the plane, and I already had a problem. The toilet was clogged. So naturally, I went to my husband and said, babe, the toilet is clogged. I don't really know what to do about it. I mean, buying a plunger hadn't really made it on my top priority list for that day in particular. So I informed him of the situation, and he proceeded to say, oh, you flushed the toilet paper, didn't you? Well, yeah, I flushed the toilet paper. I thought maybe he meant you flushed too much toilet paper at once or something. I was like, I didn't flush too much toilet paper. I just flushed some toilet paper. And he's like, yeah, you can't flush the toilet paper. I was like, what, you serious? Then my husband proceeded to explain to me that in Mexico, at least in certain houses, certain buildings, you cannot flush the toilet paper. You are to throw the toilet paper in the trash bin in the bathroom. That was shocking to me. I was like, what? But over time, it's something that I've gotten used to, along with many of my other expat friends. I mean, you know, you just use scented trash bags, take your trash out often. Now, there are exceptions to this. There are certain houses with like a newer plumbing system which can handle the flushing of toilet paper. But I mean, even now we're in a brand new house. The house that we rent right now, we're literally like the first tenants to be here. And you shouldn't flush the toilet paper, at least not much. So just be aware. There are going to be exceptions, you know, airports and hotels that cater to foreigners. Those tend to be more toilet paper flushing friendly, but just be aware, you know, if you're at a friend's house or something, you will likely want to throw the toilet paper in the bin if you see one there. Number 2, it is possible to run out of water. It was about day 4 perhaps of life in Mexico, and we hadn't bought any appliances yet, and FYI, those don't usually come with a rental property as sometimes they do in the US. It's pretty rare here unless you're actually getting a furnished apartment. So there's no stove, no refrigerator or anything like that. So I was happily cooking away on this tiny little 2-burner electric stove that you just plug in the wall. And I went to wash my hands. I turned on the faucet and nothing. Weird. I went to the bathroom, turned on the faucet and nothing. Husband, where did the water go? He said, oh, we may have run out of water. What? I don't understand. Where I'm from, water is unlimited. Your water bill will go up if you use a lot of water, but you don't really run out of water. I was very confused. He went outside and I observed as he checked the cisterna, which is like an underground water tank. And he said, oh yeah, we've run out of water. And especially since we're sharing the water with our neighbor here. I was like, what are you talking about? Then I proceeded to learn about the existence of these cisternas and also tinacos, which are like water tanks that you'll often see on top of a roof or just beside a house. Those are visible. And then the cisternas are these like underground water tank things. So when the water is distributed in your area, which depending on where you live could be every day, every other day, every third day, once a week, once every 2 weeks, that water will fill a cisterna, will often get pumped up into a tinaco if you have one on your roof, and then the water from the tinaco is basically your water pressure. If you run out of water in your cisterna and or tinaco, you can buy more. There are trucks that can come and fill up your water tanks, but that has a cost, obviously. So definitely check that situation out before you decide to move somewhere. Our first little apartment in Cabo had a really bad water situation. The water would come like every week, I think. And then the new house that we moved to had, I think, like 3 tinacos. So we pretty much never ran out of water. Again, we also don't have a problem here where we are in Chiapas. We really never ran out of water, but it can happen. So keep an eye on that. Number 3, I was very surprised that even my Mexican husband, because of not having been in Mexico for a while, did not know the most economical way to obtain drinking water. No, you should not drink the water. This is true. This does not just apply to foreigners. Locals do not drink water out of the tap either. Now, I'm not talking about here a filter. I have not investigated that. I think I've heard of some people doing that. I don't know anyone personally. So we spent our first week probably in Mexico purchasing these little 5-liter jugs. Obviously, we went through that really fast because remember, you're not just drinking water, you're having to use this water for your beans and for just your soup and for whatever you're cooking, you're having to use this purchased water. So we were going through that really quickly, and then all of a sudden a friend introduced us to garrafones. Garrafones are these big 20-liter, usually blue, purified water jugs that you get once and then they're reusable. All you have to do is have the water purification place fill it up. So obviously this is much more economical than just purchasing bottled water every time you go to the store. Didn't know this, now we know. Now you can either take the garrafones yourself to the water purification place, or you can have an at-home service where we are right now for 10 pesos or 11. I think it's just gone up to 11 pesos. You have someone come to your house, get your garrafones, go fill them up and bring them back. Oh, that's 11 pesos per garrafón. In Los Cabos, it was more expensive than that. I can't remember how much at this point because it's been a few years since we've lived in Cabo San Lucas, but of course everything is more expensive in Cabo San Lucas. Number 4 thing that surprised me is that I needed to use gas tanks to cook with. So these little propane gas tanks connect with your stove, your dryer, your water heater, all of that. And that is our source of just about everything. Of course, we use electricity too, but most people don't use electricity to cook with. And just like with the water situation, you just call the people, place an order, or you can just flag someone down when you hear gas come, and they will come to your house and change your gas tanks. They'll take the one that you have and leave you with a full one. It's supposed to be full anyway. Number 5. Every day sounds like Independence Day. Now this is really more specific to San Cristobal de las Casas, Chiapas, where we currently live. Didn't experience this so much in Los Cabos, but I don't know. Back in the US, I was used to hearing lots of fireworks, firecrackers on the 4th of July and New Year's. But here in San Cristobal, it's like all the time. I mean, there's a celebration for everything, and people really like firecrackers here. It was very difficult to sleep the first few nights. Yeah, expect a lot of noise in general, which leads me to number 6, the street vendors. So those of you who are from cities, you know, where maybe it's more typical to see street vendors, I don't know, maybe this wouldn't faze you as much. But back in Lexington, Kentucky, there's no one on the street selling stuff really. So this was an adjustment as well. There's just the constant el pan, gascom, aguaciel. So you got to get used to that. There's a lot of noise in the streets. Eventually you don't even hear it. Like I don't, do you hear anything? I don't even hear anything. But it is noisy. Mexico in general is just going to be a more noisy place to live, perhaps, depending on where you're from. And people are selling things all over the place, from little bracelets to freshly baked pan, bread. I forgot how to say that in English. People selling handcrafted items. Often, even if you're in your house and not on the street, you can still hear people announcing their products. You know, that's kind of fun. It's something you get used to, but be warned, after having lived in Mexico for a while, when you go back to visit the States, the quiet can be a little unnerving. I'm not comfortable with silence anymore. Number 7, don't use the local post office service. Your mail will never arrive. So this kind of works both ways. Things mailed from the US to Mexico via just regular mail may never arrive, and vice versa. If you use like Correos de Mexico, you know, the thing may arrive, it may not, it's gonna take a while, or it may not. You just never know. It's very unpredictable. So again, I have found this out over the years the hard way after losing things. When we first got here, my parents sent me a box through the regular mail. It never arrived, except that it did 4 months later. This is a common occurrence. However, things like UPS, FedEx, DHL, Estafeta, which is, I think, is a local Mexican delivery service. Those are very reliable. Always get my stuff, or if not, a replacement, but normally I just get my stuff. Number 8, there are several people that you need to tip when you are in Mexico. People that you would not normally tip back in the US. So these are people like the baggers at the grocery store, who, come to find out, are often volunteers, and you need to tip them. But besides that, there's always going to be someone trying to offer help in exchange for a tip. So you'll be walking to your car in the grocery lot and someone will, "Can I take your groceries, ma'am?" And people will jump on top of the car at stoplights and begin washing your windows without asking. That's okay, just give them a tip. Now your windows are nice and sparkly, unless the light changed before they finished and then you just have a lot of soap on the window. Number 9 thing that surprised me here in Mexico is that not everything is cheaper. So as you would expect, many things are cheaper. Rent, utilities, services of any kind. However, when we talk about gasoline for your car, electronics or name brand items that are imported, you know, those are going to be more expensive. So I try to bring my electronics over whenever I go to the US. If we are in need of a tablet or cell phone or computer, I will try to bring that over as I come. But otherwise, you know, you're gonna be spending usually twice as much. The things that are cheaper really offset the things that are not, but still, be forewarned that you will spend a pretty penny if you're going to be buying new electronics or, you know, Kraft cheese or Johnson sausages and things like that here in Mexico. Number 10 thing that really surprised me here in Mexico and made me really sad was to see so many children working in the streets. That is something that I was not used to seeing, but kids from tiny little 3-year-olds that are often walking with a older 8-year-old sibling, you know, they're walking around the streets selling things or trying to perform a service to get some money for their family. So it's a hard thing to see. They're very small, often not in school. One time, a little girl who looked like she was no bigger than 4 years old walked out by herself into the highway where we were parked at a light, I think, asking for money. But then she saw that my husband was eating a hamburger and she was obviously really hungry and she started crying for the hamburger. So of course he gave it to her. And then we eventually saw her mom, who was, I don't know, like a couple of lanes away. So the girl was like literally by herself in traffic. It was very emotional for me. You will see a lot of children in the streets. I'm not saying that all of them are in hard conditions. Many of them are, but it is something that will surprise you if you were not expecting to see small children with no parents usually walking around the streets. I think I'm going to end it now. I could go to 50, but why don't we stop it at 10? So I know this video was a bit different, so you guys tell me, did you like it? Do you want to know more about life in Mexico? All the things that I love about living in Mexico. I will be happy to make more videos like this. If you are going to travel or move here to Mexico and you don't speak Spanish fluently, you're going to want to brush up on your Spanish. So definitely download a free copy of your Spanish fluency blueprint that I have prepared just for you. You can download that from the link in the description box, the first link, or you can go to ericaelsewhere.com/blueprint to get your hands on that. Don't forget to like this video if you liked it, subscribe and hit the notification bell. Mis amigos, I will see you here very soon. Adios.